In September 1992, Britain witnessed one of the most dramatic financial events in its modern history, the collapse of the pound. Most people today know the event by its headline name, Black Wednesday. But what many do not realize is that the collapse wasn't simply a mistake, or a moment of bad luck, or even a sudden blind panic. It was the result of a series of political decisions, economic pressures, and strategic moves that combined to make the fall of the pound almost inevitable. Some would say it was engineered by forces that understood exactly what was going to happen long before the British public did. And in this video, we are going to explore how the 1992 pound crisis really unfolded and why it was far from an accident. To understand Black Wednesday, we need to go back to the late 1980s, when Britain joined a European system designed to stabilize currency values across the continent. This system was called the Exchange Rate Mechanism, or ERM. In simple terms, the ERM was meant to prevent wild currency swings by locking European currencies into narrow trading bands. If a currency moved too far above or below the band, the central bank had to intervene, sometimes aggressively, to correct it. And that's where Britain's problems began. In October 1990, the British government, under Prime Minister John Major, committed the pound to the ERM at an exchange rate of 2.95 Deutschmarks per pound. Economists at the time warned this rate was artificially high, making British exports more expensive and putting pressure on domestic industries. But there was a deeper political motivation. Britain wanted to show Europe that it was serious about monetary cooperation. Joining at a strong rate demonstrated confidence. But confidence alone cannot fight economic reality. By 1991, the UK economy was sliding into recession. Unemployment was rising rapidly, breaking 2 million and heading toward 3 million. Businesses were closing, investment was slowing, and consumer confidence was falling. Yet, under ERM rules, the Bank of England was required to maintain high interest rates to support the pound's value. This meant British households and businesses were paying some of the highest borrowing costs in Europe. Mortgage rates reached 15% at one point, crushing families who had bought homes during the late 1980s housing boom. While the British public struggled, foreign currency traders saw something very different, an opportunity. International financial markets, especially large hedge funds, began noticing that the pound was vulnerable. With the UK economy weakening and interest rates already painfully high, it was becoming harder and harder for the government to justify defending the fixed rate against the Deutschmark. And that's when one name emerges above everyone else: George Soros. Soros, a Hungarian-American investor, had built a reputation for understanding currency misalignments better than almost anyone. In 1992, his fund, the Quantum Fund, performed a detailed analysis of the ERM system, and it concluded something extraordinary. The pound was massively overvalued. If Britain tried to keep defending it, it would run out of reserves. If it raised interest rates further, the recession would deepen. And if it lowered interest rates, the pound would fall. Soros bet that the British government would be forced to devalue the currency. He wasn't alone. Several other large investors, including banks and hedge funds, reached similar conclusions. Together, they began to place huge bets against the pound. This wasn't random speculation. It was a calculated response to an unsustainable policy. By early September, the pressure on the pound was reaching breaking point. Britain spent billions of pounds from its foreign currency reserves trying to buy its own currency and push the value up, a bit like dumping buckets of water into a sinking ship and hoping the sea level 1t rise. But the markets were simply bigger than the government's reserves. On the 15th of September, Britain spent around £1 billion in a single attempt to defend the pound. But the next day would become the true turning point. The morning of the 16th of September 1992 began with panic inside the Treasury and the Bank of England. Overnight, currency traders around the world had launched massive sell orders of the pound. Billions of pounds were being dumped onto markets, and the Bank of England was forced to buy as much as it could to prevent the collapse. By 9 a.m., the pressure was unbearable. The British government announced an emergency increase in interest rates from 10% to 12%. The hope was that raising rates would make holding pounds more attractive to investors, slowing the sell-off. But the markets didn't believe it. Within hours, the pound was falling again. At 1 p.m., the government made an even more extraordinary announcement. Interest rates would increase again to 15%. It was a desperate move. No modern economy can function with interest rates at that level for long. The markets viewed the announcement as a sign of panic, not confidence. By 7 p.m., the British government finally admitted what the markets already knew. The pound was withdrawing from the ERM. Britain had lost the fight. The currency collapsed. The government's spending to defend the pound cost £3.3 billion directly, but long-term losses were estimated at over £27 billion. George Soros reportedly made £1 billion in profit in a single day. And just like that, Black Wednesday became one of the most expensive economic events in British history. Now here's where the story becomes even more interesting. The collapse was not an accident. It was predictable. It was preventable, and it was the result of a system designed with flaws that many economists had pointed out years earlier. The ERM required countries with different economic structures, different inflation rates, wage systems, and productivity levels to lock their currencies together. Germany, for example, had a strong economy and low inflation. Britain, on the other hand, was struggling with recession and high interest rates. Fixing the pound to the Deutschmark meant tying Britain to a country with a completely different economic rhythm. Many critics said that joining the ERM at the wrong rate set up the pound for collapse long before markets attacked it. Another reason the crisis wasn't accidental lies in the political motivations behind staying in the ERM for European leaders. The ERM was a stepping stone toward future monetary union, the project that eventually created the euro. Britain's membership was symbolic. It showed commitment to closer European integration. But symbolism cannot fight economic forces. When markets tested the system, political pride collided with financial reality. There is also the role of currency speculators. While the common story focuses on George Soros breaking the Bank of England, the truth is more complicated. Soros did not cause the collapse. He accelerated a collapse that was already mathematically inevitable. Investors simply recognized what economists already knew. The pound could not survive at its fixed rate, and the UK government did not have the financial power to defend it forever. In other words, the government was gambling with the pound, and markets called their bluff. After Black Wednesday, something surprising happened. Despite the huge losses and political embarrassment, the British economy recovered more quickly than expected. Once freed from the ERM, the pound was able to float freely. Interest rates fell, exports became cheaper. Businesses began to invest again. Between 1993 and 1997, the UK experienced steady growth, lower inflation, and increased competitiveness. Some economists argue that leaving the ERM was one of the best things to happen to the British economy, even though it came at an enormous short-term cost. However, the political damage was catastrophic for the Conservative government. Black Wednesday destroyed their reputation for economic competence. It played a major role in their eventual landslide defeat in 1997. The Labour Party used the event, again and again, to highlight the dangers of mismanaging the economy. Even today, Black Wednesday is remembered as one of the most humiliating moments in modern British financial history. But it also remains one of the clearest examples of what happens when political goals override economic realities. So why do some people say the pound collapse wasn't an accident? Because the warning signs were visible long before 1992. Because the ERM was flawed from the start. Because the government chose a politically convenient exchange rate rather than an economically realistic one. Because investors understood the imbalance and positioned themselves to profit from it. And because Britain tried to defend an exchange rate it could not sustain. In the end, the crisis was the result of political stubbornness, economic misalignment, and market forces responding exactly as they were expected to. Today, the 1992 pound collapse stands as a powerful reminder: no currency, no matter how iconic, can defy the laws of economics forever. Governments can try to control markets, but markets will always test the limits. And when the pressure becomes too great, even the most historic currency can fall in a single day. Thank you for watching British Economic Archives. If you learned something new today, please like the video, share it, and subscribe for more deep dives into financial history. Your support helps us bring untold economic stories to life. I'll see you in the next episode.